Welcome back. My name is Matt Reiners, and I'm the co-founder of Eversound, a company dedicated to improving quality of life for older adults by giving them the gift of hearing. Today, I'm joined by my friend, Walt Armentrout, the CEO of HeartLegacy. Walt is one of the good ones, and I've spent a lot of time with him on the conference circuit where we spent some quality time at the health tech shows, the leading age shows, the smash shows, our Genum shows. I've like some other guests, I've seen Walt more than some of my own family. So it's an honor and a privilege to have him on here today. So thanks, Walt, for joining.
Matt, thank you so much. Long overdue. And I got to say, I know I speak for myself and all your listeners. Thank you for always kind of unbiasedly pushing the industry forward with the All Ears podcast. And in that vein, I'll try to remain non-product specific and unbiased throughout this discussion. But thank you for all you do, and I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely, Walt. So I think one of the interesting things that I want to start with you at, because, you've been on the technology vendor side, right? We have very similar roles when it comes to that. And I'm sure you've seen or even experienced some of those successful ones between the tech vendor and the senior living provider. And I'm curious, what are some of the things you think people should be looking for or looking to avoid for that relationship?
Yeah, it's a good question. And as cliche and obvious as it may sound, I think that it starts with choosing a vendor that's going to be responsive, someone that is going to pick up the phone when you call, when something inevitably goes off the rails. It's what happens with technology. But I'm asked all the time from our partners, from colleagues in the industry, hey, Walt, what do you think about this particular CRM or this web designer? Or who do you recommend for a resident engagement platform? And while I can't speak to every one of those solutions specifically, the one takeaway I typically give partners or providers is look for someone that's going to answer the phone when you call, whether that be the CEO or whether that be the salesperson that you worked with or the support team. It just offers a level of peace of mind with technology that you've really got to have. And then, the other piece, not necessarily something to avoid, and again, something that seems obvious, but it's do your due diligence, right? If you're shopping technology partners, reach out to other leaders in the space that might be leveraging that solution, get their feedback. And probably more importantly is reach out to the end user, which oftentimes uses that product or solution more than leadership, someone at the community level, reach out to them and learn how that product's working. And sometimes more importantly than the efficacy of a product, but what the support is like. So really, as obvious as it is, do your due diligence, ask people in the industry what they think about a particular vendor, and I think you're going to learn a lot.
I would agree. I think, I look at life as an open book test, right? And I think other people kind of embrace that as well. And you might as well just ask other people that are using technology providers. And then I think to your early point, and we've experienced this, similarly, where I've had people say like they want to work with us because they know if they have a problem, they can call me and we can fix it, right? And actually be serious about that. So I definitely have experienced that. And I think, so that's one piece of the puzzle in terms of starting those relationships. But I think, one of the things that we've both seen is how do we properly roll out and operationalize new technology? What have you learned along the way in terms of doing that?
Yeah, like you said, I think we've both been in this boat before. We have learned that selling the why behind a solution is so important, the why to the actual end user. So you've got to basically, once you have leadership to buy in, you've got to resell as a vendor. It's our job to resell the why the home office just chose this particular solution, because a lot of the times they feel like, oh, great, here's another, checkbox from the home office, something else I've got to add to my already busy day. But when you're operationalizing, whether it be a new process, procedure, or product, you've really got to get the end user to understand why it's going to impact their day-to-day, why it's going to help them operate more efficiently, or more importantly, how it's going to help improve the lives of the residents they're caring for. So if you can get them to understand the why behind a solution, they're much more likely to buy in. And then on the vendor side, if you really want something to properly roll out and be operationalized, it's all about support. It's support. There's a lot of tech companies, I think, that come into the space and they're going to create a SaaS-based solution, set it and forget it, let it go. And we've done our job as a technology vendor. And Matt, as I do, that's not at all the case here. for a lot of reasons, for staff turnover, for technical ability. It is about supporting constantly. So I think, reaching out and monitoring usage and monitoring satisfaction levels and making sure your product is giving those outcomes on a weekly, monthly basis is so, so important.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, and one philosophy I always like to adopt and share with our team is, yes, we're a technology company, but we're a service company first and foremost, because if we're not providing that, things are just not going to get used. And I think, teaching to the why and sharing the why. And also what I've learned too is based on that person's role within the community, what's in it for them, right? The activities director is different than the sales and marketing director versus the clinical director. So it's like, how do you craft that value prop to help them be successful in their job is one of the things that I imagine you've seen as well on that.
Yeah. And when you take that unselfish approach that, any good tech provider wants to see or should want to see their product succeed. They want to see the end user of that product see results. And then the wins for us as the tech providers, they come after the fact. If someone loves our product, they're going to refer you. And, the bonus is it's doing great things for residents or their operations or whatever it is. So any good tech provider is going to be really bought into the success and continue to support their product.
Yeah. And I think as we're thinking about continuing to success or like continuing to help support them to be successful, we all see the turnover happening, even at the home office or at the community level. Have you seen anything else that providers have done as a company to help ensure that continued success?
Yes. We've kind of internalized something. We just say lead by example all the time. That's what we teach. All of the leadership teams that maybe, and again, I'm trying to stay as unbiased and non-product specific as I can here. But when a new provider comes on and they decide to bring on sales mail, for instance, we really push on leading by example. It's hard to ask your team members to do something that you yourself are not practicing. I am as guilty of it as ever. CRM activities, for instance. On a weekly basis, I am harping with my team, track your activities in CRM. You got to log your phone calls, your emails. And, I'm not the best about it myself. So the point being, if you lead by example, your teams will follow. And then the other thing that we do, which has really worked well in the adoption and success of our products, is we will gamify or we will incentivize the use of our products throughout our partnerships. We do some really unique things in hosting, Dash for Cash contests. We actually will go so far as to help our partners write activity metrics into their comp plan, putting it into job requirements, things that will almost force the usage, but we do so because we know it's going to make a difference in their processes or the lives of residents. So when you can kind of gamify or incentivize and maybe go so far as to getting it written to a comp plan, it tends to get people whipped into shape.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just kind of incorporating it into some of the core basics there, right? It's just like making it almost not an option, and it just sets them up for success as well. And, I'll plead the fifth on my own CRM activity and keeping myself updated. But, well, and I know you had mentioned it a little bit here, as we talk about technology. I know one of the things that HeartLegacy is known for is sales mail, which I'm actually a user in and certified in. So I'm a big deal, Walt. But I'm curious, you're, I think, one of the few, if not two companies that is really driving this idea of using personalized sales videos in the sales process. And I'm curious, how do you see, or where do you see video playing a role in that?
Yeah, I think video can do a lot for senior care. Obviously, I'm probably a little biased, but I'll say that when we first brought a video solution to senior living, it wasn't about sales and marketing. It was about legacy preservation, hence the name HeartLegacy. But we brought an amenity to senior living to help residents pass down life story videos. Very simple point and shoot, uploads to us where we would edit it, make it beautiful, give it back to residents and families. We still do a part of that today. But we soon began to see a lot of other needs that we could fulfill through video, one of which being on the marketing front. Senior living as an industry has just done a poor job in telling the story. Anyone listening to this podcast, what senior living is all about. But there's a lot of folks out there who don't. And you tend to see that aha moment when they walk into your community for the first time and they say, wow, this is this is senior care. I had no idea. So we started to kind of verge into offering marketing content. So activity directors could point and shoot, capture all the fun happening around a community. It would upload to us. We edit it. We brand it in a way that the marketing teams are proud of. So we can bring that aha moment to leads, potential residents and families a little bit earlier in the sales cycle, maybe when they're at home scrolling Facebook. And then once we moved from that professionally edited marketing video, which we still do, sales mail came about, which, as you mentioned, Matt, you're a sales mail partner, strong user. But sales mail is great for one-to-one video, just to build trust and relationships at the right point of the sales process to help advance people to the next stage. Very, very simple to use. And, you know, I say it all the time, there's not another industry in the world that requires a more personal connection in order to win the deal. You know, you've really got to establish likability and trust with that decision maker, with that adult son or that adult daughter. In video, when used the right way, is a really great way to do that, to put a face with a name, build trust, and help them feel comfortable in making a decision for their mom or dad.
Absolutely. I think, you know, you hit on a good point of, you know, you have to have that relationship in place in order to do something. And I think the video really helps to capture that, where I've noticed it in my own, you know, sales activities. I think it helps to catch tonality. And I think you can kind of catch people's personalities and vibes, and, you know, for better or for worse for me. But I think it's just a great way to kind of help showcase that and like break through the noise. Cause I think, you know, a lot of people are receiving things, but when you're able to kind of showcase some of that, it's different and it's memorable. And I've had people never respond to a video. Then I see them at a conference and you go, "You're the one who sent me that video." And I'm like, "That I am." Yeah. Yep. Bald guy with cool shoes. It's my go-to.
Yeah. Love it.
But I'm curious, when we're thinking of the sales process, like what specific places do you find that senior living providers are using video? Is it in the prospecting side? Is it a little bit deeper in the funnel? Maybe all throughout? Like, any thoughts or any best practices you've seen there?
Yeah, you know, we're fortunate because we get to kind of oversee video usage among thousands of users across the senior care space. So we get to really hone in on where they're using it, which is where we've derived kind of our 5 touch points of the senior care sales cycle. That video can move the needle. And again, we've kind of pulled all these through, you know, our own study, some A/B testing we've done with partners, but really just looking at the way our partners leverage video. And it starts with, from the moment they get a lead, it's putting a face with a name, whether that lead come from a place for mom, from a referral source, or they called into the concierge and left a name and an email. A sales director, a DSM, can very quickly send a video to put a face with a name, just to differentiate themselves and establish a higher level of trust, more so than a phone call or email would. And then we see a lot of pre-tour confirmations. You know, we've all been stood up for demos. We've been ghosted for tours. So we see a lot of our partners leveraging sales mail to almost hold someone to the appointment, but really it can guilt them into letting you know that they're not going to make it. You know, if I say, "Hey, Matt, can't wait to see you at 2:00 this afternoon in the lobby," I then feel as the recipient, "Hey, Matt went so far as to record this video. I was thinking about not showing. Maybe I'll let him know." So that pre-tour confirmation is good. Post-tour, you know, by the time someone gets to their car in the parking lot, we see sales directors sending a very warm thank you video. It's kind of like the new age thank you note, 15, 20-second video that helps them stand out. A lot of our pros will do amenity overviews. So if they've done some good discovery and they learn that a prospect loves to read, they'll go record in the library. Or they were a veteran and they have a wall of heroes, they'll record with the wall of heroes or pull in another Navy vet. So really personalizing the amenities to someone's interest. And then the fifth one we see a ton of is apartment virtual tours. And I like to differentiate. There's kind of two kinds of apartment virtual tours. There's one-to-many, which is a marketing video, lives on a corporate website. It's very generic. It's great. You need those. But when you can do that one-to-one apartment virtual tour, you know, the 2-bedroom that just opened up on the corner, it's the exact unit that potential resident would be living in. When you can do one of those, works great. It really helps speak to that resident's interest. And then, of course, we see a ton of recruitment videos, team building for internal communication. All that is very big as well.
Yeah, no, I love it. And, from a practice standpoint, it makes absolute sense, right? I think it's kind of the future. You mentioned it's like the versions of the thank you note today. And I would have to agree with that. I think I've even called it the millennial thank you note, but it probably shouldn't be ageist to just that age demographic. But, Walt, I'm curious, do you have any customer stories or case studies that saw an improvement utilizing video?
We have a ton of stats to back that up. I will say that probably the best evidence I can give behind sales mail is that I have my teams using it every single day on both the sales side, customer support side. And I absolutely wouldn't have my sales team spending time on any activity that didn't absolutely move the needle. So sales mail is kind of a required outreach type. We make phone calls, we send emails, text messages. Sales mail has to be a part of that cadence. And we mandate that because we know it works. But we do have a ton of stats that we pull from our partners. We did a study with Julie Podowitz at Vitality months ago, where we did 2 different sales mail contests. The first month, we had a pre-tour sales mail contest just to determine how pre-tour sales mail videos would impact an inquiry to tour ratio. We saw a 22% increase in inquiry to tour. And then the next month, we did a post-tour sales mail contest, and we saw a roughly 30% increase in tour to move-in. Now, attributing those stats to sales mail alone is probably not fair, but we do know that when we ran that contest, they had back-to-back record-breaking move-in months.
Amazing. Yeah. It's one piece of the puzzle, right? And it's going to do more. It's going to do more good than it will bad. I mean, I can't think of really any bad. Unless people are like anti-video, but I've yet to come across them.
Especially in the sales role, we're kind of extroverted personalities. Like you said earlier, you get to showcase all that nonverbal communication, the hand motions and eye contact and tone of voice, all the things that make Matt, that's why people gravitate towards you, because of your personality. Salespeople in general are pretty extroverted. And when you get to showcase that, it's, helps you be remembered.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Walt, always my favorite question to ask our guests, if you could give senior living providers and/or, technology vendors just 3 guiding principles as they are looking into the future, what would you say?
So in terms of tech, if I were to answer that question in terms of technology, I would first speak to the vendors and say that your tech or your product alone is not enough. Because Matt, like you said, there's turnover. Once you implement your solution, that's just the beginning. So it is our responsibility as partners to ensure the continued success of our product. So you've got to constantly support no matter what. This is not a set it and forget it industry. That's just the way it is. A lot of people, I think, learn that the hard way. So from a vendor perspective, you've got to support. Your tech alone is not going to carry you. Then the second thing for providers, I spoke to it earlier, is lead by example. And whether that be, adopting a technology or a process, or, regionals that visit a community, stepping up and helping with residents in their care is super important. You've got to be willing to do the work yourself. And again, that speaks to both technology side and just stepping up and taking care of residents. So lead by example would be the second guiding principle. And then thirdly, and this one might be a little bit selfish, but I would encourage providers to attend conferences at least once a year, once every 2 years. I think it's important to keep your finger on the pulse of technology and innovation. Matt, it's you and I's job to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the industry. And better than anybody, you go to these conferences, there's a new tech provider at every one. It is very overwhelming, and that's our job. So I can't imagine how difficult it is for the providers to keep up with what's new and what's out there. So I would say try to attend a good conference once a year, maybe once every 2 years. It can be counterproductive. It's hard to leave the office. You can't go to every conference. You're going to end up just being a conference road warrior like we tend to be, Matt. But from the provider perspective, you got to keep your finger on the pulse of what's out there, what innovation's working, walk the trade show floor, go to round tables, learn what people are doing. And I think it's going to really help serve you well.
Amazing. Mic drop. Thank you so much, Walt from HeartLegacy, for joining us here today. I really enjoyed our conversation and know our listeners will too.
Matt, thank you so much, man. Much appreciated.